welcome to this week's video. This week I thought I'd play around with watercolours and draw one of my favourite characters from a podcast series called Critical Role. This is the second season and this character is called Mollymauk. If you're new to my channel, I am a bit of a D&D fan and I listen to two separate podcasts at the moment with two separate campaigns. I really enjoy Critical Role, recently just got into High Rollers, and of course I have listened to the Adventure Zone. But in all honesty, Critical Role steals a little bit part of my heart because it's what really got me into D&D. But I'm not really going to be talking much about this character in particular because spoilers, and if you have never heard of Critical Role before, they are a group of nerdy voice actors who sit around and play Dungeons and Dragons, or as they would call, we play Dungeons and Dragons! I really like them. I've fallen in love with their characters. They've inspired me with their storytelling, the story writing. I think Matt Mercer's a fantastic DM, and it's really inspired me to DM my own campaign as well. I won't be talking too much about D&D, but I did my first one-shot this week, and hopefully in a future video I can tell you all about that. But right now, I thought this would be good to talk about my watercolour journey. For those who are new to this channel and for those who are regular, I actually started using watercolours properly when I started this channel. I was a novice to a lot of traditional mediums, mainly because when I first started doing illustration, I mainly only did line work. This is why I feel like line work is my strongest suit, because it's the thing that I've worked on for the longest time. And before I really started this channel, I was really a digital artist because at university it's a skill that I learned. And I felt my digital work started to get stale. I thought the colours were fantastic. I really loved a lot of the colour stuff that I did. I think some of my favourite pieces were just like really bold colour choices, but I felt like my art was getting stiff and I wanted to take it in a new direction. So when I started doing this channel, which is nearly coming up to its 4-year anniversary, which is absolutely insane, I figured I would branch out and try some new materials. I'd always used markers every now and again. I wasn't massively familiar with them, but I really didn't have much in the way of traditional medium. And someone suggested that I try watercolours, and with my art journey I followed tutorials, I've been watching other people's techniques, I've learnt from so much, and I feel like I've really improved with my watercolours. I find that light washes and building up really helps with me. I've now tried ink style watercolours, which I absolutely love, and I've tried a few different techniques, and I've come to really, I don't know, come really within myself, within my watercolour journey. There is still an awful lot for me to learn, and one of the things that I had to learn was patience. Watercolours, I'm really glad that they're not oils, because oils take forever to dry, but watercolours is one of the more forgiving mediums that I have really enjoyed using, and it's one of the reasons why I've stepped out my comfort zone a lot, because I find that different materials you learn different techniques with, and you can have an awful lot of fun with them. With this piece in particular, I know it's only a headshot, it's not the most complicated thing in the entire world, but I really wanted to focus on getting those details correct. You'll notice with his purple skin tone, I'm using a bit of yellow to lift up certain areas. I'm not just using purple, I'm using different colours to try and make that skin pop a little bit, because I find that if you're just using a flat colour for a certain section, sometimes it doesn't sing as well as it needs to. So it's all about trial and error with colour, and I've learned very quickly how stuff can get muddy and when to stop with watercolours. Like I said, it's still a journey, there's still a lot to learn, but overall I've really had a lot of fun with it. So what are my tips with watercolours? Step 1, patience. A lot of patience. One of the things I really don't like is it can take quite a while for layers to dry, but if you can get impatient like I do, a hairdryer or a or what they call those craft dryers, are really helpful. Like you can see in the colour section here, you can see where the colours have started to bleed on the red square that's just near the top. That's because I was very impatient and I didn't wait for the previous layer to dry. I was able to fix it, but that could have been completely avoided if I'd used a hairdryer in between layers. So the next thing I would say we've learned is try different techniques. There are a lot of techniques out there that you can learn. There's plenty of watercolor artists here on YouTube, and I know there's quite a few on Skillshare as well, and people that would not only be able to show you techniques, but able to show you like different ways of approaching. One of my favorite is a wet on wet method, where you allow the colors to run. I think it looks really beautiful, and sometimes you can make really interesting marbleized backgrounds and marble skin tones, and you can create some very interesting shapes. In particular, what I like to do is I like to put watercolor down, and when I feel like I've gotten to a certain stage with watercolor, I layer on top with the polychromos just to get that texture that I couldn't quite achieve with the watercolors. Like I said, I am still learning, there's still a lot to learn, and if there's any tips that you guys have for watercolors, let me know in the comments section down below, because I'm always excited to think of new techniques. Step 3 with watercolors, another thing I would suggest is find a palette that works for you. Now this palette that I'm using that you can see here, because it's a very loved palette, I've had this now for 3 years and I've yet to replace any of the pans in them. I use this palette like every single week. You may have seen it in a lot of videos. This palette cost me £27. It was on sale. I'll leave a link down below to the website that I used, and this is the 48 pan from Winsor & Newton. Now I will admit I replaced a few of the colours myself with some professional grade colours. I believe the pink is I think the pink, one of the pinks is, one of the blues is, and one of the purples is the professional grade. I didn't buy a lot because, hey, they can be £8 a pan, and that's a lot of money. But I have had that palette for a very long time, and it has done me an amazing job. I find that with watercolors in particular, they can last you quite a while. Another good tip that I can give for you is keep your watercolors wet while you're working. This makes them much easier to work with. I have a little spray bottle that I spray the watercolors with as I'm going across, because otherwise I find myself digging into the pan, and digging into the pan can cause this dip, and it can, you know, it's not that it's unsightly in any way, shape or form, but it's just, this helps avoid that a little bit by spraying a bit of water on top. It helps lift up the colour and helps bring more vibrancy to your colours as well. Another thing that I learned is when to stop with layering. One of the things that I find is I get very impatient very quickly, and I just like a colour to be laid down, and it's one of the reasons why I end up using alcohol markers a lot, is that I can put a large area of colour down and that colour is bright and vibrant, whereas watercolour is very much about layering. So you'll notice here that I'm building up on top with the polychromos, and this is because this is something that I was not able to achieve properly with the watercolours, but the polychromos allow me to add a little bit more texture to the piece that would not have been there with the watercolours, or when I've gone a little bit too dark, I'm able to lift that colour back up. This is mainly a watercolour piece with polychromos put on top and a little bit of white gel pen, just to build up certain areas in certain sections. I like to try and use a different amount of colouring, so instead of like one area being quite flat, it builds up certain textures in certain areas. I could push it further if I wanted to, but I wanted this piece to be very colourful without it being like overly rainbow and bright and oversaturated. I'm using a lot of desaturated tones in here to really make those saturated tones pull back a little bit. I don't know, I seem to learn every single time I use watercolours, and I think since my first ever watercolour video, I feel like I've really improved. When I look back at some of the art I've done for this channel, and there is a lot of art for this channel, I can really see how not only I have grown as an artist, but also you guys as well. When you've been tagging me on Instagram and you've been tagging me on Twitter of your amazing pieces, it's just so wonderful to see art journeys and how people progress. So that was the Mollymauk piece, and you can see the Caduceus piece next to it. The Caduceus piece was done earlier this year in a stream. There is Jester, and there's Not, and there's Yasha and Bo. I'm not particularly fond of the Bo piece. I might actually redraw that one at one point. But I have also done Caleb and Ford as well. If you want prints of this, it is available up on my store. I'll leave a link down below. But I really hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and as always folks, stay creative.